So what we'll do is, what we've done is, prior to the 2012 London Olympics, we've done the economic briefing model. It's a predictive model to determine what the number of medals for each country is. Now, it's quite interesting is that we found that there's a correlation between large countries, countries with large populations, countries with strong GDP per capita, and the number of medals that those countries will achieve.
Okay, so you're saying then that economic performance is very primary as well to the number of medals a country could get.
Absolutely. Our predictions are that the United States, which is currently the largest economy in the world, will generate 113 medals. China, which is the second largest economy in the world, will generate 87 medals. So there is some degree of anomaly. If you look at India, which has a large population, our predictions are that India will achieve a mere 5 medals in the Olympics. So there is some discrepancies in terms of how the model calculates it. But in the main, large countries, large populations, which large economies generate large number of medals.
All right, then South Africa then has been, tipped to get 4 medals. Considering that we're qualified for 73 Olympic events, do you feel then that that is a fair representation of how South Africa will do?
I think so. Firstly, I think it's a feather in the South African cap to firstly qualify for 73 events. But more importantly, in terms of the model, South Africa comes in the top 50. It comes 48 out of the top 50, and there's more than 200 countries that participate. I think it's a respectable number of models. It's about 5% of what we would try to achieve, and certainly something that is very respectable. Bearing in mind, in Beijing, we only achieved 1 medal. So I think it's a significant achievement if we achieve the 4 models.
Well, you said economic performance was key. How does then us being part of the BRICS, and we're one of the lowest countries in the BRICS in terms of this model then, how does that then fare in terms of the rest of the BRIC nations? Well,
firstly, I think it's a fantastic accolade for South Africa to be part of the BRICS nations. But in comparison to the BRICS, we are pretty small in terms of the size of our economy, pretty small in terms of the size of our GDP. But I think where we fare very well in comparison with the BRICS is the size of our GDP per capita, which is respectable in terms of the other BRIC nations. And of course, we are quite significant in terms of other emerging economies across the world.
All right, and now I want to move to another aspect, and that is home advantage. We saw when it was in Beijing, China scooped the most number of medals there. Does home advantage play a significant role, considering now that it will be in London and the UK team?
Absolutely. In our surveys over the number of years, we found that home advantage was a considerable benefit to the countries. If you take it back to Beijing, China achieved the largest number of gold medals. If you take it back to Sydney 2000, Australia achieved a significant amount of benefits. Our modeling will tell us that the UK, the Great Britain, will achieve 54 medals, and that's significantly up from Beijing. It achieved 47 medals. So home advantage does play a major fact. In all the surveys, the only exception we found was in Atlanta, where we didn't see the advantage coming across for the US. But certainly, we find that home advantage is a major player in terms of determining the number of medals.
Australia saw a decline, though, since Sydney. And do you know why that is?
There's been a steady decline in Australia since Sydney. But bear in mind that we predict that Australia will achieve 42 medals in the 2012 Olympics. That is quite significant for a country that's pretty small when you look at the global landscape. And if you compare the economies of, say, Australia to the economies of China, China will achieve 87 medals in terms of our prediction, and Australia a respectable 42. What we also find that when state intervenes in terms of preparing the candidates, there's a significant benefit in terms of the number of medals that countries achieve.
All right, well, now we move back to the top 30 countries then. They're predicted to lose 31 medals in total. Why is that?
Well, what we find that is, whilst the top 30 countries will lose medals, you find new players coming into the play. South Korea, for example, is a significant achiever. I think of importance to us on the African continent is that Kenya will come in the top 30, And Kenya is specialized, as we know, in long-distance runners, and they will receive possibly a respectable 13 medals in the London 2012.
So,
Games.
I mean, Kenya will most likely get all of their medals in their running categories there. Do you see Africa then, doing better, as time goes on with this?
Well, I think that's absolutely crucial for Africa to improve, and we think there will be an improvement. But what we found, though, is because of the constraints around specialized training centers, that those athletes, that African athletes that train in specialized centers overseas, generally perform better than their peers. So we will definitely see an increased performance from African athletes.
My final question then to you is, do you see South Africa ever hosting an Olympic Games?
Well, I think it's something that we need to aspire to. It's a very expensive games to host, unlike the FIFA World Cup. But just to put into perspective, the predictions are that the London Olympic Games will generate in excess of $80 billion from now to 2015. That on an average day, over 500,000 spectators will join the Olympic Games. It's a very expensive event to host, but hopefully in your lifetime we will achieve an Olympic Games in our beautiful country, South Africa.